Thank you for downloading this episode of the 187 Said podcast. Apologies for not producing an episode before now, but it takes a while because I do have a full-time job. However, if this is the first time you've listened to an episode, feel free to listen to some of the others and get back to me with your comments. So I'm producing this podcast basically because I'm very passionate about how men are perceived, how we perceive ourselves and how the world perceives us. I'm very much interested in all of anything that kind of affects our daily lives or the way we're perceived. This is a podcast for men and those who identify as men and those who care for men. And it will be any subject related to that, whether it's political, whether it's medical, whether it's emotional, whatever. So if you have any suggestions at all, please feel free to let me have those. Any comments, you can do so, and everything that I produce or any connections to us are in the show notes. So we have a Twitter, Instagram, Facebook page, we have an email address and a WhatsApp telephone number, so you can WhatsApp me directly and we can have a conversation. Secondly, Google Meets first Sunday of every month at 11 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Log on and we can have a chat. You don't have to have your cameras on, but when you do come on, we're just hoping that you be a nice chap. So just to backtrack, I'm producing this podcast myself, so I bought the kit, the mics, and I edit it myself. If you feel quite passionate about this subject too and want to help me either promote or produce more episodes, feel free to get in touch. Again, all the details are in the show notes. Feel free to listen, because you're listening to this for free, so please, in order to support the podcast, share this with somebody else. Let's talk about it. Add your comments, but subscribe as well, as I don't produce an episode every week like most podcasts. Well, not yet anyway. If you subscribe, it means whenever I do post an episode, you get that straight away. Add a comment as well, whatever platform you're listening to me on, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, whatever. Just leave a comment, and as I say, subscribe, and you'll get an episode as and when they come up. So thank you for listening to me prattle on. One of the things that I wanted to make sure is that I produced up to now 6 episodes, and they don't really kind of follow, there's no real continuity about subject forms, no kind of development. So what I think I'd do is produce an episode that is helpful for all the future episodes, and you'll understand some of the questions I ask people, the way that I question when we have guests in, and also hopefully it helps you kind of understand or use the way that I think to either increase your understanding, or maybe if you want to critique it, the way that I kind of understand things, then feel free to get in touch. Actually, what I'll do is I'll produce an infogram, because that's always helpful for you to download at your leisure. I want to start from the beginning, but then just to let you know, I might get a bit counselling or therapy-esque about this whole thing, because I am currently studying to be a counsellor, and some things kind of seep in. So we'll start from the beginning, and let me know what your thoughts are. Every individual has a history. For where we are today, however you got here, you'll be made up of skin, flesh and bone, but also your past. The people around us that teach us will also have their own learning history. So they're made up of their yesterdays, and the yesterdays span from the moment you meet them, when you're born, to thousands of years. You have devout customs or a religion or so on. Those would not have been brought to you last year. They're thousands of years old or hundreds of years old. Or what I'd like us to do though is for us to think about not just that, but also look at ourselves as individuals and where we are in the environment and how we kind of learn. And my theory is the 5 senses that we have, that's sight, touch, hearing, things we smell, things we taste, I think those are a trigger for our learning. So the things that almost brand our brains with significant events or learning. Think about the emotions or the feelings you have, or what things you've heard, whether it's music, favourite song, something that somebody used to sing to you, or a song that your family used to listen to, or if you didn't have your own biological family, about the things that happened around you and what sort of learning or what sort of branding that had within your psyche. And these are the things that make up who you are as a human being. Should I say, these are the things that end up moulding you as a human being. And that moulding is what we call your factors, or who you are, your identity. So we're all made up of codes, or we've got beliefs, or we've got attitudes, the things that we believe to be right and wrong, the things we feel we're entitled to, the things we think other people are not entitled to. And these will all be made up of our history. And those thoughts, feelings and beliefs and those attitudes that we have will definitely colour the way in which we look at situations or themes or things around the world, or the way that we view the world will be coloured by our history added with our beliefs and our attitudes and the way that we view the world. And when we think about these things that happen in the world, whether it's ideas about abortion, whether it's ideas about parental rights, whether it's our beliefs about how we view ourselves as men, how we view women, how we view people who are not heterosexual, or people who how we might view ourselves as not being heterosexual. I believe that at some point there will be something that triggers emotional response. That's what we need to motivate us to do something or not do something. So our emotional response would be the whole range of emotions, and despite the fact that there is the understanding that we as men would be fine or angry, the bits in between are probably not afforded to us as men, though we may feel them, but nobody will recognise them if we try and express them. Or when we do express them, it could be translated as being aggressive. Certainly we would have an emotional response, might well be triggered. If you imagine a Marshall amp that goes to 11 being the highest and 0 being nothing, then regardless of what their emotion it is, it's about its intensity and whether or not we can manage that intensity. So we can have feelings of anger, whatever it's made up of, but essentially we need to look at how loud that emotion is. So anger at 10 or 11, it probably can't really be managed as well as anger at 3, 4 and 5. The size of that emotion will have an impact in the decisions we make. We're probably not making the best sort of decisions or being as objective as we possibly could be than if we were at 2 and 3 and taking a calmer view of things. And if you don't believe me, probably look back at some of the relationships you've had, some of the decisions you've made, and some of the good advice that you've ignored. Let me know if I'm right or wrong. From that, emotional response will become a decision. So we go from that emotional response to us making the decision that are either good or bad, or positive or negative, whichever way you want to look at it. But once you've made a decision, there will be an action. And in action will be a behaviour or something we physically do. We either stay with the situation, we either vote to change it. That action will then lead to a consequence, and that consequence could lead back into the situation that we find ourselves in, and we can decide again to allow that to filter back into how we're feeling at that particular time in that situation, and it either produces a different or same or an increased or reduced emotional response, and then there's a decision, then there's an action, then there's a consequence. So that's the kind of a loop of a situation. Or we could bypass the situation, and whatever the consequence is, it ends up going back into our history. Everything we do, we have a choice. Now, because of the way that we have been raised or who we are, we're also handed a set of tools with our beliefs and attitudes, and if the tool is to break something, or if the tool is to run, or whatever it is, we will do that until something new comes along. and hopefully that learning history, or that the consequences of our behaviour, leads us to learn or evolve into a bigger and better person, or for some it can lead us to more entrenched beliefs and lead us down a spiral of devolution. Thank you for tuning to this episode of the 187 Said podcast. I'm 187, and I hope you found this episode useful, or it sparks off at least a few questions in your mind, and you can use this model to examine the world around you. Apologies, listening back to it, I can hear myself saying episode quite a lot and the world quite a lot. Very annoying, but nonetheless, hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll be using this model in the next episode, which won't be too long. If you have any comments at all, feel free to leave a voice note or send a message to +44 7367 03 4004, or you can send an email to me at 187said@gmail.com, and feel free to visit our other socials, and I'll start posting stuff on there, and make your suggestions, share this podcast because it helps me a lot. So tell your friends about it, share it, comment on it, and leave a comment on any platform that you are listening to this on. Have a great day. Stay brilliant. Bye bye.